You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a conversation between a student and a job advisor. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Is this, room number 26?
Yes, that's right.
So, is this the Student Job Centre?
It certainly is. How can I help you?
Well, actually, I'm looking for a job, a part-time job. Do you have anything available at the moment?
Yes. Are you a registered student? I'm afraid this service is only available to full-time students.
Yes, I am. I'm doing a degree in business studies. Here's my student card.
Which year are you in?
Well, I've been at uni for 4 years, but I'm in the 3rd year because I took last year off.
Right. Well, let's just have a look at what positions are available at the moment. There's a job working at the reception desk at the sports centre for 3 evenings a week. That's Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays.
Oh, that sounds like fun, but unfortunately I have evening lectures, so that's not possible, I'm afraid. Is there anything during the day?
OK, that's no good then. What about cleaning? There's a position for a cleaner at the childcare centre.
Right.
But you'd need to be there at 6 a.m. Does that appeal?
6 o'clock in the morning? Oh, that's far too early for me, I'm afraid. I'd never make it that early in the morning.
Well, there was a position going in the computer lab for 3 days a week that might be OK. Here it is. No, it's in the library, not the lab. Clerical assistant required. I think it mostly involves putting the books back on the shelves. Oh, no, hang on. It's for Wednesday and Friday evenings again.
No, I can't manage that because of the lectures.
OK, I'm getting the idea. Look, I'll just get a few details from you anyway, and then we can check through the list and see what comes up.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
We'll fill in the personal details on this application form first, if that's OK.
Yeah, that's fine.
Now, what's your name again?
Anita Newman. That's Newman.
And your address, Anita?
I'm in one of the halls of residence for postgraduate students. You know, International House.
OK, that's easy. What's your room number there?
Room B569. No, sorry, B659. I always get that wrong. I haven't been living there very long.
Do you have any other skills? Typing, languages, that sort of thing?
Well, I speak some Japanese.
Right, I'll make a note of that. Now, let's see what else is available. What do you think of administrative work? There's a position for an office assistant at the English Language Centre.
That sounds interesting.
It's for 3 days a week, Monday, Friday and Saturday mornings. Interested?
I was hoping to have Saturdays free, but I need the work, so... Can you tell me what the job involves?
Yep, sure. It says here that you'll be required to deal with student inquiries and answer the phone.
I'm sure I can handle all that without a problem.
Great. Well, would you like me to arrange an interview for you? Say Friday morning around 10?
Can we make it a bit later? Unfortunately, I've got something to do at 10. Would that be okay?
Not a problem. How about 11:30? Hope it works out for you, Anita.
Me too. And thanks for all your help.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Riverside Industrial Village. To start your visit, I'm just going to give you a brief account of the history of the museum before letting you roam about on your own. I won't keep you long, OK? Now, from where we're standing, you've got a good view of the river over there. And it was because of this fast-flowing water that this site was a natural place for manufacturing works. The water and the availability of raw materials in the area like minerals and iron ore, and also the abundance of local fuels like coal and firewood, all made this site suitable for industry from a very early time. Water was the main source of power for the early industries, and some of the water wheels were first established in the 12th century, would you believe? At that time, local craftsmen first built an iron forge just behind the village here on the bend in the river. By the 17th and 18th centuries, the region's rivers supported more than 160 water mills, and many of these continued to operate well into the 19th century. But then the steam engine was invented, and then the railways came, and the centres of industry were able to move away from the rivers and the countryside and into the towns. So industrial villages like this one became very rare. So, that's the history for you. If you'd like any more information, you can ask me some questions, or you can read further in our excellent guidebook.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 14 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 14 to 20.
Now, I'm going to give you a plan of the site, and I'd just like to point out where everything is, and then you can take a look at everything for yourself. I've already pointed out the river, which is on the left, and of course, running along the bottom is Woodside Road. Got it? OK. Now, we're standing at the entrance. See it at the bottom? And immediately to our right is the ticket office. You won't need that, because you've got your group booking, but just past it are the toilets. Always good to know where they are. In front of us is the car park, as you can see, and to the left, by the entry gate, is the gift shop. That's where you can get copies of the guide, like this one here. Now, beyond the car park, all the buildings are arranged in a half circle with a yard in the middle. The big stone building at the top is the main workshop. That's where the furnace is, and where all the metal was smelted and the tools were cast, as you'll be able to see. Now, in the top right-hand corner, that building with bigger windows is the showroom, where samples of all the tools that were made through the ages are on display. In the top left corner is the grinding shop, where the tools were sharpened and finished. And on one side of that, you can see the engine room, and on the other is the cafe, which isn't an antique, you'll be pleased to know, though they do serve very nice old-fashioned teas. The row of buildings you can see on the left are the cottages. These were built for the workers towards the end of the 18th century, and they're still furnished from that period, so you can get a good idea of ordinary people's living conditions. Across the yard from them, you can see the stables, where the horses were kept for transporting the products. And the separate building in front of them is the works office, and that still has some of the old accounts on display. Right. If anyone wants a guided tour, then I'm starting at the engine room. If you'd like to come along this way, please, ladies and gentlemen.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear part of a seminar on ocean research given by a climate scientist. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Thanks to all of you for coming along today to hear about how the Robotic Float project is helping with ocean research. Well, first of all, we'll look at what a robotic float does and its use. So let's start with the device itself. It looks a bit like a cigar, and it's about 1.5 meters long. More importantly, it's full of equipment that's designed to collect data. So it can help us in building up a profile of different factors which work together within the world's oceans.
Sounds like a big project. Isn't it too big for one country to undertake?
That's quite true, but this project is a really good example of international cooperation. Over the last 5 years, scientists from 13 countries have been taking part in the project and launching floats in their area of ocean control. And next year this number will rise to 14 when Indonesia joins the project.
That's impressive.
But let's move on to how floats work. The operational cycle goes like this. Each of the floats is dropped in the ocean from a boat at a set point and activated from a satellite. Then the float immediately sinks about 2,000 meters. That's 2 whole kilometers down in the water. It stays at this depth for about 10 days and is carried around by the currents which operate in the ocean at this level. During this time, it's possible for it to cover quite large distances, but the average is 50 kilometers.
So, what is it actually recording?
Well, at this stage, nothing. But as it rises to the surface, it collects all sorts of data. Most importantly, variations in salinity, that's salt levels, and the changes in temperature, a bit like underwater weather balloons. Then, when it gets back to the surface, all the data it's collected is beamed up to the satellite. After about 5 hours on the surface, the float automatically sinks, beginning the whole process again.
What happens to the data?
Well, the information is transferred direct to onshore meteorological stations, like our one in Hobart, and within 4 hours the findings can be on computers, and they can be mapped and analysed.
Before you hear the rest of the seminar, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
You say you're building models of the world's ocean systems, but how are they going to be used? And more importantly, when?
Some of the data has already helped in completing projects. For example, our understanding of the underlying causes of El Niño events is being confirmed by float data. Another way we're using float data is to help us to understand the mechanics of climate change, like global warming and ozone depletion. That's part of an ongoing variability study, but the results are still a long way off. However, this is not the case with our ocean weather forecasting. Because we know from the floats what the prevailing weather conditions will be in certain parts of the ocean, we can advise the Navy on search and rescue missions. That's happening right now, and many yachtsmen owe their lives to the success of this project. In addition, the float data can help us to look at the biological implications of ocean processes.
Would that help with preserving fish stocks?
Yes, and advising governments on fisheries legislation. We're well on the way to completing a project on this. We hope it will help to bring about more sustainable fishing practices. We'll be seeing the results of that quite soon.
It sounds like the data from floats has lots of applications.
Yes, it does. It's also a powerful agricultural tool. If we were aware of what the weather would be like, say, next year, we could make sure that the farmers planted appropriate grain varieties to produce the best yield from the available rainfall.
That sounds a bit like science fiction, especially when now we can't even tell them when a drought will break.
I agree that this concept is still a long way in the future, but it will come eventually, and the float data will have made a contribution.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I have been asked today to talk to you about the urban landscape. There are two major areas that I will focus on in my talk: how vegetation can have a significant effect on urban climate, and how we can better plan our cities using trees to provide a more comfortable environment for us to live in. Trees can have a significant impact on our cities. They can make a city as a whole a bit less windy, or a bit more windy if that's what you want. They can make it a bit cooler if it's a hot summer day in an Australian city, or they can make it a bit more humid if it's a dry inland city. On the local scale, that is in particular areas within the city, trees can make the local area more shady, cooler, more humid and much less windy. In fact, trees, and planting of various kinds, can be used to make city streets actually less dangerous in particular areas. How do trees do all that, you ask? Well, the main difference between a tree and a building is a tree has got an internal mechanism to keep the temperature regulated. It evaporates water through its leaves, and that means that the temperature of the leaves is never very far from our own body temperature. The temperature of a building surface on a hot sunny day can easily be 20 degrees more than our temperature. Trees, on the other hand, remain cooler than buildings because they sweat. This means that they can humidify the air and cool it, a property which can be exploited to improve the local climate. Trees can also help break the force of winds. The reason that high buildings make it windier at ground level is that as the wind goes higher and higher, it goes faster and faster. When the wind hits the building, it has to go somewhere. Some of it goes over the top, and some goes around the sides of the building, forcing those high-level winds down to ground level. That doesn't happen when you have trees. Trees filter the wind and considerably reduce it, preventing those very large, strong gusts that you so often find around tall buildings. Another problem in built-up areas is that traffic noise is intensified by tall buildings. By planting a belt of trees at the side of the road, you can make things a little quieter, but much of the vehicle noise still goes through the trees. Trees can also help reduce the amount of noise in the surroundings, although the effect is not as large as people like to think. Low-frequency noise in particular just goes through the trees as though they aren't there. Although trees can significantly improve the local climate, they do, however, take up a lot of space. There are root systems to consider, and branches blocking windows and so on. It may therefore be difficult to fit trees into the local landscape. There is not a great deal you can do if you have what we call a street canyon, a whole set of high-rises enclosed in a narrow street. Trees need water to grow. They also need some sunlight to grow, and you need room to put them. If you have the chance of knocking buildings down and replacing them, then suddenly you can start looking at different ways to design the streets and to introduce tree planting.